Hello there and welcome. In this episode, we're going to continue working on the shopping system, and today we want to focus on the selling mode. So we basically want to have some kind of way to sell the items that we have in our inventory and get some money out of it. So the first thing we want to do is create a selling panel the same way we created a buying panel, because we need to provide it over here into the shopping system. So instead of doing all of this from scratch, I'm not going to provide you the assets this time because it's going to be very simple. We're going to take something that we already have. So if we go into the canvas and we find our storage box small, this is for the storage that we created in the past. So it's this small UI. We're simply going to click on it, Control D to duplicate it, and now we have a copy of it. So we're going to disable the original one. And now we have a copy of this storage box small. We're going to rename it to sell panel, the same way we have this buy panel, and we're going to change it a bit. So first of all, we're going to increase the height of it. So we're going to drag it like that. Then we're going to open it. We're going to select all of these slots and we're going to move them a bit to the top. We have this exit button over here, so we're going to position it at the top. Again, it depends on your UI and your style, but we need to add a few more things into this panel. We're going to right click UI Text Mesh Pro. Again, we click here, Alt, expand. Then we're going to position it under these slots. And we're going to add the anchors. Then we're going to do the same thing, but with a button. So UI button, expand, and we're going to drag it under this text. So we're going to adjust the anchors as well. Now we need to change this to amount to sell or selling amount, and this will be our sell button. For the sell button, I'm going to use some kind of sprite from the package that I already have, maybe this one or this one. Let's say this one, but we're going to make it a bit smaller. And now we're also going to rename it to be sell items. We're going to give it a brighter color and we're going to give it the font. Okay. And for this selling amount, we're going to position it in the middle. We're going to give it the same font. We're going to make it a bit smaller, maybe 18 or 24. And we're going to just make it empty because we're going to change it via the code. Okay. So now we have this panel over here. And basically when we drag items into these slots, it's going to display the price or the money that we're going to get from selling them. And then we can simply click on sell items and it's going to sell these items. Let's just make the text a bit smaller. So also, let's say 24, 18, 20, something like that. Now on these slots, we need to make sure that we also have the inventory item slot, the inventory slot, okay? Because inside of our inventory system, we upgraded it to use stacks, so we also have this inventory slot script. But for the storage, we did not upgrade it. So of course, this is something you can do for the storage system. We simply did not cover it, but we're going to select all of these slots and we're going to add an inventory slot script that we already have. And we need a reference to the amount. So for this, we're going to open our inventory screen slot and we're going to take this amount text. We're going to copy it and we're going to paste it inside the first slot. Let's make sure that it's a child. And of course, we're going to reset the position. We can see this 0 over here. Then we're going to do the same thing for the other slot. So simply duplicate this, drag it over here. And also select all of these texts and reset the position to 0. So each slot will have its own amount text. Okay, now we also need to add these references into the inventory slot script. So for the amount text, so we simply drag the amount text into the slot, and we do this for every slot. Okay, so now we're done. We don't need the reference over here. This is just for debugging to see what is the item inside the slot. So this is going to be assigned in runtime. Now we're going to do the same thing like we did with the buy panel, but instead of adding the actual script on the UI, we're going to make it separate because we saw that it can give us different problems. So we're simply going to, let's collapse this and this. Let's create a new object and name it cell system with the same script. The cell system will also be a singleton, so we can just go to our buy system and copy this entire part, this entire region, and paste it inside the cell system, but just rename the name of the instance and collapse it again. Now we want to add the references for the UI components. So we have a reference to the button, to the selling button, and to the TextMesh Pro GUI, so we can display the amount. We also want a reference to the button, back button, right? So we need to be able to go back into the main screen. And now we also have a reference to the cell slots themselves, and also to the actual items that are going to be found inside these cell slots. Okay, so this is actually not inventory slot, but inventory item. Okay, these are slots and these are the items inside the slots. Then inside the start method, we want to get these slots. So start, and we're going to have a method named get all slots. We also want to add a listener to the cell button. And also to the back button. This we're going to generate. And for the selling, we're also going to create a method. We're going to name it sell items. So we have it over here. And for this, we're going to also generate a method named go back. Or maybe to be more clear, exit cell mode. Over here, we can simply access the shopkeeper and call the method that goes back. But because we don't have a reference, we only have a reference in the buying system, we can access the buying system, or we can just also add a reference to the shopkeeper to the selling system, okay? Of course, the shopkeeper by itself, he is not a singleton, but if it's easier for you, you can make him a singleton, and then you will be able to access him without adding the reference over here. So now we can simply access the shopkeeper and then use the dialog mode method. And this method simply closes the sale and the buy screens and goes back into the dialog UI. Now, this is not something we want to do at any point, because what if we have items inside the selling screen and we still click on going back? If we're going to do this, we're just going to lose our items inside this sell screen. So for this, we need to add some kind of condition that will check if we have nothing inside the sell panel, then we can go back. So we're going to add if check if cell panel is empty. So only if the cell panel is empty, we're going to actually go back. We're going to generate this method. and we're going to deal with that later. Over here, we're simply going to check if the sell panel is empty. And this is actually pretty easy. We can just go over here and use our items to be sold and check if items to be sold count is smaller or equals 0, then return true. Otherwise, return false. Okay, so if we don't have any items to be sold, we can know that the sell panel is empty, and then we can actually exit, go back to main shop menu. Next, we want to deal with the get all slots. So we basically want to get these game objects that are on this cell system. So for this, we're going to simply say over here, for each transform child in game object transform if the child has a tag named slot and all of our slots have this tag, then cell slots add this child. So we basically add this child. Well, actually we get the component of the inventory slot. We don't care about the actual game object. We want this component, the inventory slot component, and we add it into this list. And we can also just clear this before we start, although we are not going to do it too much. But this is not going to work because the game object is this cell system, and as we know, the cell system is not the actual UI, so we can add a reference over here, and this is just because I changed some things along the way. So now game object, this will be the cell panel, and now we can use the cell panel instead of this game object. Okay, so now into the cell system we're going to add a reference for, let's see, the cell panel itself, for the shopkeeper, for the sell button, which is this sell button, for the sell amount, and for the back button, which is this button. We can also rename it to back button. Of course, you can change the way it looks. You can add another button over here. But again, I assume that in your game, the UI will look completely different. So we have all of these references, and let's continue with the script. Now we also need a method that is going to scan all of these slots and check what are the items in the slots and basically add these items into the items to be sold list. So over here, let's add a method named public void scan items in slots. And this will basically do the same thing. So we can copy this content, but instead of the sell slots, it's going to be items to be sold. And instead of checking the transform, we're going to check the inventory slot in cell slots. So all of these slots that we got over here, we're basically looping over them, and we check if there is an inventory item in this slot. So if slot item in slot, because each slot keeps track of the item in the slot, is not null. So if we have some item in this slot, then we're simply going to take our items to be sold list, and we're going to add this slot item in slot. Okay, and this will basically take all the items from these slots from this list and place them into this list. But over here we have the slots, and over here we have the actual items. Another method that we want is a method to update the UI and to understand what is the selling price that we get. So public void update sell amount UI int total price to display will be 0 in the beginning. Then we're going to loop again for each. So for each inventory item that we have in items to be sold, we basically want to take our total price and add to it the item amount in inventory multiplied by the item selling price. And then we're also going to take the sell amount text and we're going to set the total price to string and we're going to display it. So over here we have a temporary variable that is storing the total amount to display, and then we're simply going to add the item for all the items that we have. So we take the item and we have also this amount in inventory, because you can remember that the inventory item is actually a stack of items. So if we have several items in this stack, we want to multiply them by the selling price. So if we have 5 stones in this stack, we want to multiply 5 stones with the selling price. And the selling price is something that we still don't have because it's something that we only introduce in this episode. So we go into our inventory item. Let's copy this. Of course, we can also right click and then we can generate this field. But so let's do it. Let's just generate the field, but it's the same thing as just copying it, going into the inventory item, and over here we can see it over here, selling price. Let's make it public for now. So we have this integer for the selling price. And this means that every inventory item in our game should have a price. Of course, if it's not a sellable item, don't worry about it, but you should just add 0 or something. It will be 0 at the beginning. But if you want to be able to sell it, just add the selling price. It means that if we saved the script, let's save the script. So now all of our resources will have this thing over here, selling price, and we already see it over here. I don't know why it has 25, maybe it's from my testing, but it should just show you nothing. Then if we go to the tomato, we can see 0, and this should also be 0. So everything for now is just 0. And then you can add the selling price. So we can go to the tomato seed and just add the selling price. Of course, if you know a bit about gaming and finance in gaming, you should always sell items for a lower price, because if you buy the seeds for, let's say, where's the buying price? We have it in the buying system. We gave the pumpkin seed a buying price of 15. You should sell it for less. Otherwise, you can exploit the game and just keep buying them and then selling them for a profit. So we should always sell them for a lower price than the price that we bought them. And this is the same way it works in real life, right? Or you can keep it at the same price, so it will always have the same price, right? So for the pumpkin seed, we're going to find our pumpkin seed and we're going to set the selling price. So I guess this is from the testing, but it's going to be 0. Then just set it to whatever you want, 10. And you can do this for any item that you want to be able to sell. Let's say tomato seed. Let's make it 7, okay? And you can do this for tuna. So if we cut some fish, we can say it will be 25. The salmon will be, let's say, 35 or 32. And this way you can have prices for anything. So you can have buy prices and you can have selling prices. And as I told you, a wiser approach will be to create some kind of singleton finance manager or economy manager and have all of this information inside this one manager, and you can control it from there instead of having it on the actual items. So now that we have the selling price, we multiply it by the amount in inventory, and this will be the total price to display. Obviously, we add it over here, and then we display it as a string. Next, we want to take care of this sell items method, because this is the most important method. This is the method that is going to give us the money and actually sell these items. So first of all, because we're going to destroy these items at the end of the sell, we need to be able to keep a reference to them and destroy them later. We cannot destroy them as we loop over them because it's going to give us an error. So we only create this list to have a reference to these items that we want to destroy later. Game object. So items to destroy, okay? This will be a new list of game objects. Then we have a for each. We're going to loop over all the inventory items in our items to be sold list, and we're going to add them into the items to be destroyed list. And we're adding the actual game object, right? Game object. But we also want to earn money from it. So we're going to add a temporary integer over here, money earned or money to be earned. And then we're simply going to increase it for every item that we sold. So again, we're going to do the same thing, item amount in inventory multiplied by item selling price. So now that we have this, it's going to increase the money to be earned, and then we can actually add this money into our current amount of coins. So inventory system, instance, current coins, and we're going to increase it by the money to be earned. Okay. We also want to have a loop for the items to destroy, because now that we looped over them, we can actually destroy them. So for each game object in items to be destroyed, we're going to destroy the objects. So if it has some kind of item that we sold, it's going to be added into this list, and then we know to destroy it. Then we also want to clear these lists for the next time. So item to be destroyed, clear, and also items to be sold, clear. And we also want to update the UI. So update amount to sell on the UI. So now we have this as well. So now most of this selling system is done. Everything is getting called. So if we click on the sell items button, it's going to sell the items, it's going to loop, and it's going to give us the money. But at this point, we only update the UI when we sell an item. But what if we took an item back into our inventory? Or maybe we dragged an item into this place. We want this amount to always be updated depending on the items that we have inside, not only when we sell the items. So we need to find a way to actually update it every time there is a change. And there is actually an easy way to do it, because each time we drag an item in our game, there is a method that is getting called when we actually drop an item. And this is inside the, let's find it, inside our item slot. So inside the item slot script, we have this method on drop, and this is getting called each time we drop an item. So even if we drop it outside back into the inventory, if we drop it into this slot, so it doesn't matter where we drop it, it's going to call this method. And this is a good thing because now we can update the UI each time there is a drop. But because of the way the system works, we need to add a small delay to it. So start coroutine. We're going to have a method named delayed scan. We're going to create it. And, well, actually, delayed scan, right? It's going to be an enumerator. We don't need to pass anything inside, and this should actually have these braces. And now inside, we're simply going to have some kind of delay. So yield, return, new, wait 4 seconds. And we're going to set it to something very, very low. And this is just so the item inside the slot is going to be updated before we actually scan it. Because if we scan it before, then it's not going to be registered. So we need some kind of small delay just to let it update the item inside the slot. Now we can call the selling system instance scan items in slot, and also sell system instance update sell amount UI. So this will happen each time we drop an item, and this will give us a much clearer and much more updated UI. Now let's just make sure that everything has its own reference. So the sell system, yes, we have everything. Let's just close the sell panel, and now we need to add the sell panel into the shopkeeper over here. So let's take the sell panel and drag it into this reference. And another thing that I need to mention is that when we duplicated our storage box and turned it into a sell panel, we forgot to click on the back button and remove this on click listener, because we don't need this. We don't need to close the box. We have another selling system, so we're going to remove this. Instead, we have the on-click listener inside the script that is going to close the entire sell panel when we click on this. So we don't need this. Let's see if we have other things as well. No, that's it. So now if we approach the shopkeeper, we can talk to him, we can buy items, we can go back, we can also sell items, we can go back. So at this point we have 100 coins. If we open the buy system, we can buy, let's say, some pumpkin seeds, some tomatoes, and we can see that we don't have enough for the watering can. So if we go back, we can now open the sell system, and if we drag this pumpkin seed, it will show the amount of coins we're going to get if we sell it. So if we drag it inside, it will tell us that we're going to earn 10 coins. Of course, we can also add some kind of coin text over here, so we know that these are coins. And if we add both of these tomato seeds, it's going to be increased to 24 because these ones are 7 each and this one is 10, so we have 24. And now if we look over here, we can click on sell, and it's going to add the amount to our coins, and it's going to remove the items from the sell. So now we can buy more items. Obviously, if we keep doing this, we're going to run out of money because we always sell with some loss. We're not making any profit. So we can continue with this, but everything is working. So that's all for this selling system and for the entire shopping system. So we covered the system in these last 3 episodes. And of course, there's probably more things we can add for a shopping system. Right now, I don't have any ideas. If I see that most of you are asking for something specific that I forgot in the shopping system, you can let me know in the comment section, and obviously in a future episode I'm going to address it. But for now, we're going to continue with other things because we still have a lot of things to add into this game. So that's all for this episode. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you're not a subscriber. You can also become a member of the channel and support me even more. This will give you access to our Discord server, and there you can talk with other people, you can ask for help, and you can also get different perks. So I'll see you next time.